August 1942, Guadalcanal.
By July, he was completing a base on Guadalcanal.
Marines entered a jungle so dense the sun barely touched the ground. Minutes later, rifles whispered from nowhere, and men collapsed before anyone saw the shooter. Patrols froze, terrified to move an inch. Dozens died to invisible bullets that seemed to come from the trees themselves. The Marine Corps suddenly realized they were fighting a kind of warfare they had never trained for, against an enemy who could wait, watch, and kill without being seen. This is how they learned to strike back. Make sure you subscribe. When U.S. Marines waded ashore on Guadalcanal in August 1942, they expected heavy combat, but nothing prepared them for the enemy lurking in the canopy above. The Pacific jungle wasn't just terrain. It was a maze of towering palms, vines thick as rope, and humid shadows stretching in every direction. Visibility evaporated beyond a few yards, and sound echoed in strange ways, making direction nearly impossible to pinpoint. Marines had trained for frontal assaults and machine gun nests, not ghosts with rifles. The first warning came as isolated cracks, quiet, patient, surgical. Men fell mid-sentence, mid-step, without ever identifying who fired. Entire patrols dove into the mud, convinced dozens of enemy soldiers must be surrounding them. Instead, it was often a single marksman hidden high in the trees. These snipers rarely fired twice from the same angle. They simply waited, reloaded slowly, and delivered another fatal shot minutes later. Panic spread through platoons like wildfire. Young Marines began scanning branches nervously, every leaf twitch suspicious. Patrol movements slowed, sometimes taking hours to cross a few hundred yards. Even seasoned NCOS admitted they felt hunted. Officers quickly discovered that returning fire into the jungle canopy only wasted ammunition. Bullets thunked harmlessly into bark and leaves, accomplishing nothing except revealing positions to the enemy. The psychological toll was devastating. Marines described feeling as if the jungle hated them. Not a battlefield, but a living thing cooperating with the enemy. Reports flowed into division headquarters describing identical scenarios. One unseen shooter pinning down 30 men for nearly an hour. Casualties mounted with no clear solution. The Marines were accustomed to aggression and overwhelming force, but here, those instincts were punished. By the second week, commanders realized something chilling. They had entered a form of combat never addressed in stateside training. Every tree was a threat. Every shadow might contain death. And the enemy had mastered this environment long before the first Marine set foot on Guadalcanal. The learning curve would be steep, and each mistake was paid for in blood. To understand why Japanese snipers dominated early Pacific fighting, you have to look at how they were built. The Imperial Army didn't treat sniping as a minor specialty. It treated it as an art. Candidates weren't chosen simply for accuracy. They were evaluated for something far rarer: the ability to disappear. Recruits with exceptional eyesight were measured against rigorous standards. Those who twitched, fidgeted, or blinked too often were dismissed. Only the most disciplined personalities survived selection. Once admitted, trainees faced months of instruction that focused not on hitting targets, but on never being seen. They practiced holding uncomfortable positions until limbs went numb. They learned to stitch live plants into their uniforms every morning, so their camouflage was always fresh. Instructors tested them by walking directly beneath them, scanning foliage from just feet away. If even one trainee was spotted, the entire group restarted the drill. It implanted a mindset: invisibility first, marksmanship second. Equipment reflected this philosophy. The standard rifle, the Type 97, was rugged rather than elegant. Its scope wasn't designed for pinpoint precision at great distances. It was optimized for dense foliage, where even a small target area mattered. Snipers carried only a small number of rounds, reinforcing patience. They often packed rice balls wrapped in leaves, allowing them to remain motionless in trees for days. Many tied themselves to branches, so exhaustion wouldn't betray them. Doctrine emphasized psychological chaos. Japanese snipers studied American behavior, observing who carried radios, who gave orders, and who tended the wounded. A single bullet placed carefully could disorganize an entire company. They struck during moments Marines assumed were safe, while drinking water, cleaning weapons, or relieving themselves. Every violation of routine tightened fear's grip. Worse still, these snipers rarely worked alone. 3 to 5 might support one another from angles that overlapped like spider webs. Fire at one, expose yourself to another. By the time American patrols noticed the pattern, it was too late. This wasn't random brutality. It was calculated intimidation, designed to stall advances, drain morale, and bleed battalions one quiet death at a time. In the early months of the Pacific War, it worked to perfection. When Marines first arrived on Guadalcanal, their training manuals might as well have been blank. Nothing in boot camp prepared them for terrain that swallowed sound and distorted distance. Patrol routes became guessing games. The canopy overhead muted sunlight, creating permanent twilight. Shadows layered on shadows until every branch looked like a rifle barrel. And somewhere above, in silence, a Japanese sniper waited. The first lesson came fast. Marine tactics relied on aggressive forward movement, assuming superior firepower would overwhelm resistance. But aggression slowed when men realized each step might expose a skull-sized patch of skin to a hidden scope. One well-placed bullet didn't just kill, it froze everyone else. Men held their breath, afraid to twitch foliage that could reveal their location. Worse, radios crackled constantly with scattered reports. Another patrol pinned, another corporal dropped, another retreat forced by a single unseen shooter. Unit commanders tried suppressive fire, spraying hundreds of rounds into trees. But ammunition evaporated faster than results appeared. Rifles jammed in humidity. Optics clouded in minutes. The jungle felt like an accomplice. Psychological shock became the sniper's deadliest round. Marines stopped raising their heads above foxholes. Some refused to eat during daylight, terrified of showing profile. Others whispered rumors of spirits in trees, anything to justify what they couldn't see. Field medics noticed soldiers flinching at snapping branches, their minds cracking under tension. The phrase, "he's staring at us," became common, even when no shot had been fired. Platoon leaders struggled to maintain cohesion. Traditional formations created clean lines of sight, perfect for the enemy. Patrols began staggering positions, crouching low, moving erratically. Yet still the bullets found necks and temples. Japanese snipers studied human movement like mathematicians. They waited for predictable rhythms. The worst realization came after nightfall. Japanese snipers did not go home. Many slept in their perches, tied to branches so they wouldn't fall. At sunrise, they resumed hunting as if no time had passed. Marines, exhausted, understood their enemy required less rest, less food, and showed no fear of dying alone. By late August, veterans could identify the distinct sound of an Arisaka rifle echoing through leaves. But recognition offered no comfort. It only confirmed the hunter was close. Guadalcanal became a classroom where graduation required survival, and only the fastest learners lived long enough to attend the next lesson. As casualties climbed, Marine leadership realized they weren't facing a minor nuisance. Snipers weren't slowing operations. They were shaping them. Entire companies were pinned for hours by a single rifleman who fired 5 shots a day. Logistics stalled. Assault schedules slipped. The enemy had discovered a way to control the tempo of war with almost no ammunition. The Marine Corps had no official counter-sniper doctrine, no standardized rifle, and no one trained to fight this silent enemy. So frontline units began experimenting. The first tactic was observation. Marines learned to study branches. Fresh cuts meant recent occupation. Clumps of vegetation that didn't match surrounding leaves hinted at camouflage netting. Birds that suddenly went silent could betray positions. Over time, men stopped scanning eye level and started looking 20, then 40 feet above the ground. But raw awareness wasn't enough. Suppressing a sniper's nest required firepower concentrated on a small angle. Browning automatic rifles stitched tree trunks. Thompson gunners fired blind into foliage. Shotguns were issued on some patrols. Crude, yes, but shockingly effective within dense vegetation. If you couldn't see a sniper, you could pepper a wide area with steel and hope to disrupt his hiding place. Then came ingenuity. Some Marines tied mirrors to sticks, raising them slowly above cover to spot muzzle glint without exposing heads. Others crawled with mud smeared across their helmets to eliminate unnatural shine. Rifle teams practiced shooting through palm fronds without disturbing them, attempting to replicate Japanese stealth. One of the biggest breakthroughs emerged accidentally. A squad trapped beneath a sniper's perch lobbed grenades high into branches. The explosion showered dead foliage, and the sniper on top of them. Few tactics spread faster through the division. A single well-thrown grenade could collapse hours of sniper dominance. Still, for every solution, another Marine died learning it. Commanders began organizing ad hoc scout detachments. Men selected not for rank, but intuition. They operated in pairs, one spotting subtle cues, one ready to fire instantly. These small teams trailed behind patrols like silent watchdogs, waiting for the faintest evidence of a nest. When contact occurred, they responded not with panic, but mathematics, locating angles, calculating elevation, predicting escape paths. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, fear shifted into understanding. Marines discovered that Japanese snipers relied heavily on routine. They preferred certain species of trees, selected vantage points near junctions of trails, and seldom relocated after their first successful kill, trusting concealment over mobility. That trust would become their downfall. For the first time, Marines were no longer merely avoiding death. They were learning to return it. By late 1943, the casualty reports revealed something alarming. Every hour spent hunting a well-hidden sniper cost more American lives. Infantry companies were losing momentum simply trying to advance 10 yards. Patrols stalled, morale frayed, and ammunition vanished into trees. Commanders knew they needed a tool that didn't care about camouflage, shadows, or silence. They turned to fire. Marine engineers began carrying the M2 flamethrower into jungle operations, originally designed for bunkers and pillboxes. But one officer noticed something simple. A sniper's camouflage might defeat bullets, but nothing on Earth could hide from fire's hunger. Forward observers would mark trees that looked too perfect, and, instead of probing them with rifle fire, would unleash a column of flame that rolled through branches like liquid lightning. The effect was immediate. Great gouts of burning fuel clung to bark and leaves. Hidden nests ignited. Snipers who trusted stillness now faced a weapon that punished stillness most. Thick smoke revealed shapes previously invisible. Marines cheered at the sight. For once, they could sweep an entire canopy rather than guess at one branch. Japanese doctrine had taught patience, but flame rewarded speed and panic. Some snipers jumped from perches to escape burning air, exposing themselves to waiting riflemen below. Success bred new innovation. Engineers modified fuel mixtures for longer burn times. Infantry squads trained flamethrower escorts who specifically targeted canopy lines before assaults. Even the rumor of flame caused Japanese marksmen to abandon ideal positions, relocating to lower, weaker hides. Still, flamethrower operators became high-value targets. Their bulky tanks made them slow, and one well-aimed bullet could turn them into explosions. Marines responded by providing bodyguards to ensure the nozzle reached the trees. Doctrine emerged almost overnight. Riflemen pinned, assault teams flanked, and fire cleansed the unknown. As these techniques spread, something curious happened. The once invisible sniper began to make mistakes. Fearing incineration, they shifted positions more often, breaking the discipline that had made them terrifying. Their shot timing grew sloppy. Concealment rushed. The psychological war now ran in reverse. Shadows that once comforted the hunter now concealed heat and sudden death. And in the Pacific's thick air, fear traveled faster than flame. As battles spread across the Pacific, commanders finally accepted a truth that frontline Marines had discovered months earlier. You can't hunt a specialist with amateurs. If Japanese marksmen were ghosts, America would need ghost hunters. The Marine Corps responded by creating something entirely new to its doctrine. Small, autonomous scout sniper elements, trained not to defend infantry, but to stalk the stalkers. Selection began informally. Officers asked a simple question: who stays calm after the first shot? Those who ducked reflexively were dismissed. Those who froze were transferred. The few who looked toward the sound, steady, analytical, were pulled aside. They became the nucleus of a new breed. Formal training didn't exist yet, so veterans served as instructors. They taught camouflage from experience, not textbooks. Grass was woven into uniforms daily. Helmets were covered with burlap rubbed in dirt, never shiny paint. They practiced crawling inches at a time, blending into vines until even other Marines struggled to find them. Marksmen drilled on breath control, trigger squeeze, and, most critically, patience. A Japanese sniper might fire only once in an afternoon. The American answer demanded waiting longer than that. Hours passed under swarms of insects, sweat dripping, legs numb, eyes fixed on a single suspicious knot in a tree trunk. The first Marine Scout sniper graduates discovered that stillness was a weapon of its own. Their rifles evolved too. Many began using accurized 1903 Springfields with improved optics. But hardware mattered less than technique. Spotters carried binoculars and notepads, sketching likely angles, mapping suspicious sight lines. They studied trees like puzzles. A branch that bent unnaturally could indicate weight. Leaves with moisture rubbed off revealed climbing roots. Patterns emerged, and patterns could be killed. Most importantly, scout snipers stopped reacting to the Japanese. They started shaping the battlefield themselves. They predicted where an enemy shooter would relocate after a kill. They established overlapping fields of observation to catch telltale flashes. They baited shots by raising helmets on sticks, then punished the reveal with instantaneous fire. Something extraordinary happened next. Japanese snipers hesitated. Shots that once cracked confidently now snapped irregularly, betraying anxiety. The hunters were being watched by something as silent as themselves. For the first time since Guadalcanal, power began shifting, not through overwhelming firepower, but through equal mastery of the shadows. By mid-war, the Marine Corps had accepted an uncomfortable truth. Not every Japanese sniper could be hunted one-on-one. Some nest positions were carved into banyan trunks, reinforced with coconut logs, or buried into cave mouths tunneled straight into volcanic rock. Precision alone couldn't solve that. So the Marines began doing what industrial armies do best: scale destruction until the problem disappears. The shift began on Tarawa. After losing entire fire teams attempting to flush a single treetop shooter, commanders unleashed a new answer: the flamethrower. Marines watched in grim silence as a tongue of burning napalm crawled up a palm trunk, blossoming into a fireball that consumed branches where a scope had gleamed minutes earlier. Snipers, who once felt untouchable, now screamed, fell, or leapt from their hides. And combat engineers took notes. If you couldn't find the sniper, you burned the space he might be. Meanwhile, machine gun platoons learned to angle their Browning 50 cals into tree canopies. The heavy rounds didn't just punch through cover, they shattered entire sections of trunk, showering leaves and splintered wood. The jungle, once an ally to Japanese marksmen, began turning into a liability. Artillery observers adapted next. Rather than waiting for radio-confirmed positions, they learned to bracket areas suspected of concealment. A single 105mm high-explosive shell could disintegrate a sniper perch that might have taken days to build. Crews didn't call this suppression. They called it erasure. Close air support followed. Marine corsairs swooped low, riddling bamboo groves with hundreds of rounds, their engine screams triggering panic among snipers conditioned to stillness. Even if the pilot missed, the psychological tremor forced movement, and movement meant death. Then came tunneling tactics. Squads with demolition charges sealed cave mouths instead of clearing them, entombing the snipers within. The message was brutal and simple: terrain would not save you. By late 1944, the battlefield had inverted. Snipers, once immovable apex predators, now moved constantly, terrified of staying too long in any perch. Their greatest advantage, patience, was being weaponized against them. The Marines had discovered something elegant beneath the violence. Overwhelming force doesn't just kill the enemy, it forces him to change. And any change leaves a signature. Once that happened, the shadows weren't so dark anymore. By early 1945, the transformation was complete. The same Marines who once froze at the snap of a twig now moved through the jungle with the calm precision of surgeons. Counter-sniper units no longer chased shadows. They stalked patterns, sounds, and rhythms the Japanese never imagined Americans could decipher. Scout sniper platoons developed a terrifying level of discipline. They learned to mimic the wind by shifting leaves with subtle finger taps, to lay motionless beneath crawling ants, to breathe through clenched teeth so their ribs wouldn't shake the brush. Marines who once walked loudly down trails now glided along the jungle floor, choosing paths that Japanese doctrine assumed Americans would never use. Observation became obsession. Spotters tracked how light reflected off dew, how birds reacted to stillness, how cicadas quieted when a rifle barrel shifted. A single wrong blink at the wrong moment could betray a sniper. And these Marines were now masters of catching microscopic betrayal. Technology sharpened the blade further. The M1C and M1D sniper variants gave Marines the rare advantage of firing a second shot before a Japanese sniper could reset. A sound-dampened bolt on new Springfield builds allowed silent cycling. Bamboo stakes were carved into monopods for stable rests on uneven jungle slopes. These weren't improvisations anymore. They were doctrine. Communication improved, too. Marine snipers used subtle hand signals and mirrored flashes to coordinate without exposing position. Japanese teams, still relying on isolated hunting, found themselves systematically outmaneuvered by pairs who moved like single organisms. Psychological tactics flipped. Marines began letting Japanese snipers fire first, then waited. That hesitation, born of fear and training, made Japanese shooters predictable. When a sniper didn't relocate immediately, he became a dead man. When he did relocate, the rustle betrayed him. Word spread through Japanese ranks. The Americans see everything now. The jungle shifted allegiances. Terrain that once whispered Japanese advantage now hummed with American confidence. Every tree was a potential firing lane. Every ridge had eyes. Every clearing felt watched. Surviving Japanese snipers wrote in captured notebooks, "The Marines are ghosts. They wait longer than we can." That was the final inversion. The Japanese prided themselves on patience. But Marines had discovered an even deadlier form, weaponized stillness. It wasn't just marksmanship anymore. It was domination of silence. From predator and prey, the battlefield had become hunter versus hunter, and the Marines were winning. By the time Okinawa fell silent in June 1945, the equation that once terrified Marines had reversed completely. Japanese snipers, once phantoms in the canopy, now died in positions they thought were invisible. American scout sniper teams tracked with patient logic instead of panic. Flamethrowers baked tree hides. Artillery erased suspected nests. Airstrikes strafed ravines where rifle flashes glimmered hours earlier. Kill ratios that once favored Japan now swung brutally toward the Marines. And when the Emperor surrendered, surviving Japanese sharpshooters admitted something chilling. America didn't win through luck or numbers. They won because they learned faster. In the end, the sniper war proved a harsh truth of World War II. Skill fades, but adaptation compounds. For every shot fired in that jungle, a lesson was carved into doctrine. The price was thousands of lives. The reward was a force reshaped forever. The jungle's ghosts had been replaced by Marines who refused to stop learning.